And away we go. It's just me at the moment. Not sure if Risk or Eric are going to join. If they don't, I think they will. The show must go on. As we all know, as of this recording, uh, there are stories that are very out of the blue. Artificial intelligence startups are attracting record sums of venture capital, but some of the world's largest investors warned that early-stage valuations are starting to look frothy. Senior investment executives said on Friday, "There's a little bit of hype bubble going on in the early-stage venture space," said Brian Yeo, Group Chief Investment Officer at Singapore Sovereign Wealth Fund (GIC), as part of a panel discussion at the Milken Institute Asia Summit 2025 in Singapore. Any company startup with an AI label will be valued right up there at huge multiples of whatever the small revenue is. He said, "That might be fair for some companies and probably not for others." In the first quarter of 2025, AI startups raised $73.1 billion globally, accounting for 57.9% of all venture capital funding, according to PitchBook. The surge was driven by funding rounds like OpenAI's $40 billion capital raising, as investors raced to catch the AI wave. Market expectations could be way ahead of what the technology could deliver, Yo said. "We're seeing a major AI capex boom today. It is masking some of the potential weaknesses that might be going on in the economy." Todd Sisitsky, president of alternative asset manager TPG, said the fear of missing out is dangerous for investors, though he added that views were divided on whether the AI sector had formed a bubble. Some AI firms are hitting $100 million in revenue within months, he said, while others in early-stage ventures command valuations of between $400 million and $1.2 billion per employee. He said that was breathtaking. Well, yep, there you go. AI is the way of the future. Is it good? Debatable. But nonetheless, everyone is going to be at least going to be shown some kind of AI content, and that is scary. Social media is bad enough as it is. Not what the content we're watching, but the ratio of users that are human and just automated bots is absolutely wild. So the next phase for AI, being at an advanced stage that it is at right now, will only add more fuel to the fire that is currently burning across social media. But of course, AI can be good for other sectors. But of course, there's always a price to pay if there's going to be a reliance on AI technology over human workers. Because eventually, once people start adapting and scaling AI technology, humans in that particular job are going to become obsolete. And now they're going to find another job or trade in another skill or sector. That's how the world is moving these days. So we just got to prepare for that, whether we like it or not. French photojournalist Anthony Lalikan killed by a drone in Ukraine on Friday morning at 9:20 a.m. local time. Anthony Lahikan, French photojournalist, was killed by a Russian drone strike near about 15 kilometers from the line of contact. Lahikan had traveled to Ukraine in March 2022 to document the Donbas mining basin, with work published in Le Monde, Zeit, and Die Welt, winning the 2024 Victor Hugo Prize for committed photography. Kiev independent photographer Kirill Ivanchenko was wounded and is in stable condition, and both journalists wore personal protective equipment and vests marked press when struck. The 4th Heavy Mechanized Brigade accused the enemy of cynically violating international humanitarian law, and French President Emmanuel Macron extended condolences, says Lalikan was accompanying the Ukrainian army on the resistance front. Monitors report 100 have died since the invasion as of September 20, and Sergei Tomilenko said Russian drones are the main threat to journalists. I think there's a line that has to be drawn somewhere. And I'm not saying because of the death of journalists whose job is to report what is going on in the world. There has to be a line drawn regarding the protection people have whilst going into battlefield territory, as well as whoever is attacking, that they do not go over the line. Well, of course, there's going to be cases that go over the line with unaliving civilians and other people. But more stories like this is exactly my concern about just war in general. It's so perplexing. I'm certainly not siding with anyone in any war whatsoever. There will come a point, and it will come to that point eventually, that people from both sides of the conflict would want this conflict to stop. However, people on the front lines will keep going until a solution is being met. However, whatever solution that might be is not going to be agreed on for who knows how long. Because whoever is inviting the other person to agree with something is either turning down the invitation or just very stubborn with what they're demanding. So what started out as something rather petty has now gotten very dangerous and very violent. And I'm not pointing fingers on who is who and what they did what. This applies for any conflict, any war. People have needs and wants in life. But if it results in lost lives or people held hostage, you gotta think to yourself, is this what they're doing? Is it what they're doing is right? Is this for the greater good, or are they just wanting to push the limits? There could be other perspectives and alternatives. However, it's so unfortunate how these lives have been lost. Rest in peace to Antoni Larisan. Larikan. I have no idea how his name is spelled, but rest in peace, Antoni. And of course, condolences to the friends and family of Antoni. He was just doing his job, but of course his life was lost because of war conflict. It's very unfortunate. Accomplished Alaskan climber Balin Miller died in a fall from El Capitan in Yosemite National Park. Miller was attempting to retrieve his stock bags when he fell while rappelling after completing a solo climb. Miller was well known for his impressive solo climbing achievements, including the first solo ascent of Mount McKinley, Slovak Direct. Wow, that's very, very sad. 23, that's so young. That's like a year older than me. No, Balin Miller's a year younger than me. Oh, so unfortunate. And sad, of course. Rest in peace, Balin Miller. Also, I send condolences to their friends and family. I send my condolences to his friends and family. So sad that he died so young. This comes to show that it's very important that you have safety gear on when going pretty much anywhere. Not everywhere. Not everywhere, but at least if you're going climbing and there isn't any safety procedures that have been evaluated, it's very, very important that you get all the safety gear that's needed for any challenging or dangerous activity. But of course, even with the safety equipment, you never know if the gear that you have is going to give up on you. And eventually, yeah, Very unfortunate. FDA approves new generic abortion pill as lawsuit moves to Missouri. U.S. federal officials have approved another generic version of the abortion pill, mifepristone, a regulatory formality that quickly triggered pushback from anti-abortion groups and politicians aligned with the Trump administration. Drug maker E02 Solutions announced on its website that the Food and Drug Administration signed off on its low-cost form of the pill, which is approved to end pregnancies through 10 weeks. Students for Live Action, which opposes abortion, in a statement Thursday, called the approval a stain on the Trump presidency and another sign that the deep state at the FDA must go. Republican Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri also criticized the move in a post on Twitter X, stating, "I have lost confidence in the leadership at FDA." A spokesperson for the agency said the FDA has very limited discretion in deciding whether to approve a generic drug, and added that FDA officials do not endorse any product. The criticism comes as Republican President Donald Trump's top health officials, include Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., face growing pressure from abortion opponents to re-evaluate mifepristone, which was approved 25 years ago and has repeatedly been deemed safe and effective by FDA scientists. In a letter to Republican attorneys general last month, Kennedy and FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary pledged to conduct a full review on the drug's safety. The FDA approved the original version of mifepristone in 2000 and gradually eased access over time. That included approving the first generic pill from drug maker GenBioPro in 2019. In 2021, the FDA under Democrat President Joe Biden permitted online prescribing and mail-order delivery of the drug, greatly expanding access. Abortion opponents have been fighting the change ever since. Now, if Eric was here right now, I have no doubt that he's gonna have a lot to say on just abortion in general, let alone the accessibility of abortion. I will say this, whatever is needed, it's important that there is accessibility to such health procedures and medication. However, such of the following should be made a priority to those that mostly and urgently need it. And of course, I'm aware that women do not want to have children right now. And that's okay, they don't have to have children. I know that there are people that would argue that abortion should not be legal. Life starts at conception, and killing a baby at any stage of pregnancy is practically murder. Honestly, I don't know how to argue with that, or argue against it. Nonetheless, that does not mean that women should be forced to have children, especially if they don't want to. They don't have to have children. And that's okay, they don't have to. And of course, women could get raped, and that's another complexity that really adds to the abortion discussion. In such cases like that, in my opinion, that's the only exception. That is it. That is all I have to say on abortion. Otherwise, people are ready to have children, they should have children. And if they don't want to have children, that's okay. Make love when the time is right, and when both couples are ready to do so. And that's that. Storm Amy approaches as most likely path revealed. On Friday, the Met Office put in place 5 weather alerts as Storm Amy neared northwest Scotland, bringing strong winds and heavy rainfall. Storm Amy developed in the North Atlantic as the decayed systems of hurricanes Humberto and Imelda interacted with the jet stream, leading to the strengthening of a low-pressure area. The amber warning covers northern and western Scotland, including the Highlands, Orkney, and Shetland, with gusts widely reaching 60 to 70 miles per hour and possibly near 100 miles per hour on exposed coast. Neil Armstrong, the Met Office's lead forecaster, warned that Storm Amy could cause power outages, structural damage, and dangerous flying debris that may threaten lives. If the storm moves along a more southern path, damaging winds may affect Scotland's main urban region, and 3 weather alerts will remain in effect through Saturday. So, to everyone living in Scotland, when Storm Amy hits, I hope that all of your property, whatever property you have on your land, or wherever you live, is in good condition, and there isn't much damage that comes out of Storm Amy. That's all I ask. Tropical storms are quite a havoc, and cause a lot of damage. I hope that there isn't much with the case of Storm Amy. Toronto home sales rose 8.5% in September, but activity remains 27% below the 10-year average for that month. The home price index fell 0.5% from August to 971,500 Canadian dollars, marking the 10th straight month of declining or stagnant prices. Condo prices have seen the steepest drop, with the index down 8% year over year in Toronto and surrounding areas. So what does this mean for real estate in Toronto? Yeah, prices are down, but at what cost? There has to be a reason why home prices in Toronto are dropping that low. And I'm not saying it's any bad for people wanting to get a home in Toronto, but however, even when people take advantage and opportunity of low home prices in Toronto, the home prices will eventually go back up again, and again will become a lot more unaffordable than previously. But hey, enjoy the moment while it lasts. If you're a homeowner in Toronto, now is the time to get yourself a house, because that's as low as price will get. Well, that's what I read. Thursday, the Portland Police Bureau arrested conservative journalist Nick Sauter during a protest outside the ICE facility, booking him and 2 others on second-degree disorderly conduct before releasing him. Multiple agencies responding to the unrest have complicated arrests as nightly protests at the Portland ICE facility persist with escalating tactics like bottle rockets and barricades. Post-millennial reporter Katie Davenport said she was struck in the face with a flagpole, left with a black eye, and tracked the Antifa-affiliated protester for 35 minutes, while Portland police refused to arrest. Following Sauter's arrest, the U.S. Department of Justice opened an investigation, with Attorney General Pam Bondi ordering a full probe led by Assistant U.S. Attorney General Harmeet Dillon. The arrest coincides with plans to deploy 200 Oregon National Guard members to Portland, as critics argue the Portland Police Bureau selectively enforced the law by arresting a journalist while letting alleged assailants go uncharged. Honestly, what are they thinking? At what grounds does someone get arrested for anything? It doesn't make sense. If there's a law that has been broken, then a person should be arrested for breaking said law. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Laws are in place for a reason, and if any of that is broken, the authorities should take these people in. Ask the whoever the defendant is to ask why that person did what they did, and if found guilty for committing these laws on grounds of what reasons they have for doing so, they should get a punishment that reflects their actions. So what's the case here? Someone got arrested, but then eventually let go, from my understanding. Many alleged assailants were mainly let go uncharged. This is complicated. It's very complicated. Understanding which people get arrested, on what grounds, and especially if the authorities have any justifiable grounds for doing anything, whether it be taking action or not doing anything at all. We don't question authority enough. We really don't. and it should start now. Things just do not add up. Nothing makes sense. Google breaks ground on $4 billion West Memphis project, largest in ARC history. Google is investing $4 billion to build a new data center campus in West Memphis, Arkansas, creating hundreds of operation jobs and thousands of construction jobs. The campus will house a data center facility, office buildings, and substation facility, and other infrastructure to support Google's AI initiatives. This is the largest investment in Arkansas's history, as Google ramps up solar and battery storage resources to power the facility. It's classic corporation, spending big to go big, or spending big to become bigger, or at least remain bigger for years to come. There's not much I can say on that. But will this pay off? Now, $4 billion may not be a lot for big mega corporations, but to average people, that's a lot of money. That $4 billion has to be worth spent. Because if whatever this project is turns out to be a disaster, imagine the headlines. Everyone is going to be clowning on Google for years to come. But we haven't seen any of that in recent times or in the last few years. Google has pretty much anything and everything. But yeah, that $4 billion better be money worth spent and invested. Gianni Infantino stated at a FIFA Council meeting that football should promote peace and unity during times of conflict, emphasizing the organization's commitment to this mission. Gianni Infantino said at a FIFA Council meeting that FIFA is committed to using football, soccer football specifically, to promote peace and unity during conflicts around the world. And on one hand, I can think of at least one reason why Israel has managed to still compete in whatever competition that they participate in, regardless of what's going on in Gaza. However, there will come a point that Israel would have to be excluded from competitions, just like what happened with Russia. The only difference is the amount of influence and, dare I say, the amount of money that was pledged or even bribed, again, dare I say, to ensuring that decisions are in Israel's favor. Not to point fingers of government organizations, or just Israel in general. However, Israel has been keeping a pretty much low profile to the best of their ability, but of course, Israel has done pretty well ensuring that they remain in competitions that they participate in, despite so many protests, and even with the current number of nations and the millions of people protesting Israel taking part in any competition, the competition organizers are just going to find a way to turn a blind eye or find some kind of solution to allow Israel to compete in competitions. That's all I have to say regarding to FIFA and Israel taking part in competitions. I have my opinions. However, if Israel have managed to stay in competitions for so long, what's the case with Russia? Of course, of course, lots of countries at the time did call out Russia for their military operations into Ukraine. But the amount of countries, and it's just countries for competitions, not just not people, but countries. They spoke out so quickly about Russia, and an organizer's like, okay, I'm sorry, Russia, but you can't compete until the war is over. And then with Israel, as of this recording, nearly 2 years on for the Gaza genocide or conflict, genocide conflict, and it's just now that competition organizers are talking about excluding Israel, particularly in the same manner they excluded Russia from competitions. I'm all for giving reasons to give suitable punishments or restrictions for actions beyond humanity. However, I'll have to say, why now? Why now are organizers talking about excluding Israel when they had no problem excluding Russia when they send their military to Ukraine? I understand what decisions had to be made at the time, but why took so long? Why now are you talking about this? About excluding another country for military conflict? People being unalived in another territory. I just don't get it. It just doesn't make sense in the slightest. But hey, better late than never. And I always say this for any war or conflict around the world. Whatever is going on in the Middle East, I hope it gets resolved as soon as possible. I hope there are peace deals, there are treaties, and once that's done, everyone can continue living their lives in peace. That is all I ask for. I have my opinions, and I will keep speaking out, whether people like it or not. But one thing's for sure, though. I want the violence, the conflict to stop. Because that's what a majority of people around the world would want to happen. Especially if military activity goes on for far too long. India and China will resume direct flights between the two countries after a 5-year suspension due to deadly border clashes. The resumption of flights aims to facilitate people-to-people contact and contribute to the gradual normalization of bilateral exchanges between India and China. India and China have taken steps to rebuild their frayed relationship, including talks between high-ranking officials and agreements on border patrolling agreements. Fantastic. It's nice to see that India and China are trying to mend the frayed or damaged relationships. Like, no one talks about this enough. India and China do not get along whatsoever. There are two different worlds, and oh my gosh, the hatred they have for each other is unmountable. It's incomprehensible. I can't stress that enough. However, that does not mean you can't find solutions to find a ways to at least collaborate or work together. And this story right here with India and China just shows it. Sure, they don't get along in the slightest, like not even close. However, it's a start. A 5-year suspension between flights between countries. That says a lot about the staggering and shattered relations between the two countries. Imagine a suspension like that happened with any other two countries around the world. People would go mad. They would be making headlines. They would be, yeah, we won't hear the end of it. We're going to be hearing about that for at least for many months until the two countries decide not to lift the suspension. But with India and China, of course I don't get along. It's understandable. But again, it's nice to see that countries are trying to get along, trying to fix the mistakes from the past, and find ways to collaborate. It's great to see that. And I hope that continues. Harvard hires drag performer Lahore Vajistan as visiting professor. Harvard University has made waves in its forward-thinking ideas for decades. Now the legacy seems to continue as it hires a famous drag performer as a new professor, teaching students all about the importance of the TV show RuPaul's Drag Race. But not everyone is happy with the decision, with some branding it dragging the university's reputation through the mud. I see what they did there, that's kind of clever. The Ivy League school made the announcement over the summer that the drag legend is expected to grace the university halls in the spring semester. in the spring semester as a visiting professor. In July, the school informed students that Kareem Kubchandi, better known by their drag name Lahore Vajistani, will teach in the Studies of Gender and Sexuality program, forming part of the Harvard Gender and Sexuality Caucus. But now everyone is pleased to see the top university's new addition An angered Twitter X user wrote, "Harvard is scraping the bottom of the barrel for professors." Another person shared on the social media site, "Paying students and parents should scream for tuition reimbursement. I think previous students would have a case too. They purchased the prestige that Harvard is dragging, pun intended, through the mud." Yeah, dragging through the mud. Again, that's very clever. There's a clever play on words. Kareem will often teach dressed as and channeling the personality of Lahore, their personal project that has spanned a decade of performances. The two classes set to be taught over 2 semesters by Kareem, or their alter ego include queer ethnography in autumn and raw politics, drag, race, and desire in the spring semester, as per Harvard's announcement. The second class is set to focus on the reality TV show RuPaul's Drag Race, a touchstone in queer media, after 17 seasons on screens, in search of America's next drag superstar. It's hard to deny the culture impact this series has had, not just in the world of television, but in the world of drag. In an interview conducted by Johns Hopkins University Press back in 2015, Kareem revealed the origins of their memorable stage name. They said, "My name is Lahore Vegistan. My preferred pronouns are she or auntie. I chose Lahore because my family traces its origins to Pakistan. Lahore is an important city in Pakistan, and well, I'm a bit of a whore," the Queen joked. As a Tufts University associate professor teaching theatre, dance, and performance studies, Kareem has gone on to author numerous books. These reads include Decolonizer Drag and If-Style, Assenting Gay Indian Nightlife, with a new one on the way this year, relating to their teachings, titled Lessons in Drag, a queer manual for academics, artists, and aunties. I never knew. Now, of course, I knew there was going to be courses regarding to gender and sexuality in the last few years. However, I would never thought, for whatever reason, that there would be a caucus or a department specifically for gender and sexuality. I know there's going to be a handful of people that are going to have a lot of opinions on that. I will say, whatever the impact that they have made, it's no surprise Harvard is wanting to take that person to be their professor, given that the influence that Lahore has made in the world of drag, and the knowledge that Lahore has possessed, given the experiences of drag in general. So, of course, I understand why Harvard, one of the top universities, are wanting to bring such an individual as a professor for just gender and sexuality in general. Of course, Risk and Eric, they're gonna say this should not happen. University shouldn't have gender and sexuality studies course. Personally, and this is just me, what what what's the use of knowing about gender and sexuality in university? Couldn't people learn that in their own time as like a society, or it's just an extracurricular activity? What's the need to make a dedicated course, like full-time student course, specifically for just drag, gender, and or sexuality? If people want to learn that, they can go ahead and do it. You're spending tens of thousands of dollars a year, or at least throughout their entire university experience, to learn about something that they can just look into the media and television shows. There's plenty of shows that will teach you enough about gender, sexuality, LGBT themes and topics. I'm not denying people learning about this kind of stuff. How you don't need a dedicated full-time student course on this. They can learn whatever the course provides just from RuPaul's Drag Race. Like the new course is literally watching RuPaul's Drag Race as part of their curriculum. Why can't people just watch that in their own time? Wouldn't that be enough to get an understanding of what drag is all about? I'm just saying, I'm not going to stop people learning what they want to learn and pursuing their dreams and passions. However, I think there are some topics and subjects that doesn't have to be a full-time course. It could be a society or an extracurricular activity, just outside of school, college, or university hours. I think there's enough for people to know about what the gender and sexuality of the person is, or what drag is all about. I think there's enough for people to get an understanding about. Madagascar's president announces coup attempt in day of fresh protests. Call to action on social media through a movement called Gen Z. The protest forced Madagascar's president Rojalina to sack his government and invite dialogue to restore order. Rajoelina denounced the protest as a coup attempt, accusing unnamed countries and agencies of paying for the movement to remove him from power illegally. At least 22 people have been killed and hundreds injured since the protest started, according to the United Nations, though the government denied this toll. The near-daily rallies began on September 25th in the capital, Antananarivo, over power and water shortages and have since spread to other parts of the Indian Ocean island. Demonstrators have demanded the president's resignation. They have been exploited to provoke a coup, the 51-year-old leader said in reference to the mostly young demonstrators who have taken to the streets to show their anger. What I want to tell you is that some people want to destroy our country, he said in a live video on his Facebook page without naming who was behind the move. Countries and agencies paid for this movement to get me out, not through elections, but for profit to take power like other African countries. That's why I tell you to be very careful, he said. At least 22 people have been killed and hundreds injured since the protest started, according to the United Nations. A toll the government has denied a basis on rumors or misinformation. It is the latest bout of unrest to hit Madagascar since independence from France in 1960, posing the most significant challenges yet to Rajoelina's tenure since his 2020. Well, I can't argue with the part about profit to take power like other African countries. A lot of African countries had have had in the past many problems politically and in terms of whoever's in power at the time. There's no doubt about there's no doubt about that. I understand about raising such concerns that a lot of African countries have been through in the past. However, if you're going to say that this person, that person, whatever organization, and this is just me, it's important that you know exactly who is behind all of this. You got to know who was responsible for taking that person out of power. Even knowing who is responsible for these protests. If you're going to argue with young people about protesting on the streets about whatever the government is doing, not that I'm defending the government, nor I am defending the protesters. Just like we see it in Nepal, how is the protest in Madagascar any different? If you know someone in Madagascar, listen to what they have to say. Only they know what's going on in their own country. From what I've just read, this is just literally two sides of the same coin. The president is worried of being taken out of power, whilst on the other hand, the Gen Z generation are protesting regarding what regarding how the government is handling. I'm not sure about the specifics. However, if there are people protesting, there has to be something that the government is doing that is certainly not popular with a lot of people. Also, I was going to say that what happened in Nepal is pretty much the same reason why people in Madagascar, mainly the Gen Z generation, are protesting against the government. And you know what? I'm all for that. I'm all for young people protesting and having their voices heard. However, it's not enough to protest your own government. What is the reason for protesting? What is it that government doing wrong? What is the government doing that is not in your own interest? I think there's more that has to be understood from the situation. I think this could go either way. Maybe it's either down to the president not doing whatever good job he is doing, or there are just young people that saw what Nepal has done and thought, I don't agree with what the government's doing, so let's go out and protest. Yet somehow, the moment they go out and protest, not much is done. Because from what I've seen, I'm not sure what the clear reason for the protest to have even happened to begin with. And this is not to deter people from protesting at all. If you are going to protest, you have to have a reason. And if there's a reason, is it is of good intention, a good cause, and it's in the interest of the majority of the public, then make that reason clear. Lifestyle and stress erodes heart health advantage in long-term US immigrants. At the American College of Cardiology meeting, researchers reported that immigrants' cardiovascular risk increases the longer they reside in the US. Over time, immigrants adopt lifestyle acculturation, including processed foods and reduced activity, while loss of traditional diets and community support and stresses include discrimination and financial hardships erode heart health. Using nearly 16,000 adults from Henanes to Hannes, researchers found 86.4% of US-born adults versus 80.1% of foreign-born adults have CVD risks with lower hypertension, hypercholesterolemia, and smoking in those residing under 15 years. Clinicians should consider immigrants. Clinicians should consider duration of residence and emphasize early screenings, culturally sensitive counseling, and preventive interventions. Researchers urge targeted public health efforts and note findings are preliminary until peer-reviewed. Some immigrant subgroups include non-Hispanic Asians showed higher diabetic prevalence, 14.5% versus 6%, and lower smoking, while researchers said living in America impairs cardiometabolic risk factors. What a surprise! Immigrants have come to the US. Turns out to be a lot unhealthier than what their health was like back when they were in their home countries. Because majority of the United States food and what Americans consume in the US is absolute junk. I know a person that I went to the trap with. She said that the food in America, the United States, is just awful. So I'm glad I'm not the only one that's arguing about the standards of their food. And it has come to a point. Whatever food that Americans are eating is just unhealthy. And if they don't change their diet now, their lives could end quite early than usual. And given these risks, I don't know why immigrants are still going to the United States, knowing that the food there is absolutely gunk and garbage. I think these immigrants are better off going to Europe. But even then, but of course, Europeans are having a strong stance against immigrants coming to their countries. But for the immigrants that do go to a country in Europe, at least their health is much better there than in the United States. It's just it's outrageous. It's also kind of sad too. So quite unfortunate, to be honest. And that is the episode.